Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 1. To understand Islam, you have to accept certain facts about this religion. The impact of Islam on the daily life of Muslims is far greater than that found in the Western culture since the Middle Ages. Muslims advance a definition that Islam is a shining beacon against the darkness of repression, segregation, intolerance, and racism. Nothing could be further from the truth. Islam has no fundamental concept of inalienable rights as mentioned in the Declaration of Independence. Islam does not permit the individual to enjoy the freedoms of action and association characteristic of the democracy that so many Western cultures currently enjoy today. Islam is a religion in name only because of a reference to Allah as their deity. A well-known fact is that Islam is a totalitarian ideology that rejects democracy, personal freedom, and every other religion. The ideals of anti-Semitism and anti-Western culture run rampant throughout Islam. The laws of man are meaningless and have absolutely no relevance in Muslim culture because they are without any direct reference to the Quran or Sharia law and therefore they have no place in Muslim life. Islamic law/Sharia law is completely incompatible with freedom, democracy, and liberty, or any other government where the people have an actual voice in government or the will of the people matters. For example, in Saudi Arabia, a country ruled by Islamic law, sorcery, witchcraft, and blasphemy are all crimes punishable by death. They behead people convicted of these crimes in the public square. This is what Islamic law advocates. Saudi Arabia holds to Sharia law and has a religious police to enforce all the aspects of Sharia law. Christian Bibles are destroyed by the thousands like book burnings in Nazi Germany. This is not a religion of tolerance as so many Muslims claim. True Islam permits neither elections nor democracy. Sufi Muhammad, Muslim cleric. There is a fundamental contradiction between being a devout Muslim and respecting the United States Constitution and its guarantees of various freedoms. Saudi Arabia infuses Islam in all aspects of daily life. The practice of any other religion is against the law and there is an actual religious police to enforce this law. This ends any discussion concerning Islam's tolerance of other religions. All laws come from Sharia law and with its foundation in the Quran, it is the law. Muslims are convinced that this is the way all life should be lived. The belief is, if Sharia law is good for now, then it is good for all times, and they firmly believe that concept because Sharia law comes directly from the Quran, which they believe is the direct word of Allah. Islam, as practiced by the radical fundamentalists that lead the religion, does not encourage the pursuit of knowledge outside of itself as can be seen by their attitude toward other cultures, especially Western culture. This is the reason Islam is often referred to as the religion which has produced nothing but religion. Essentially, anything that is not Islamic is not encouraged and in many instances, it is outright forbidden. Ideals Americans take for granted such as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of the press have absolutely no meaning or place within Islamic culture. Islam with Sharia law constitutes a totalitarian means of ruling society at every level, including ritual worship, transactions and contracts, morals and matters, beliefs and punishments, the servitude of women, etc., etc., etc. The words peace and tolerance are not defined in Islam as it is defined in the West. It does not mean ceasefire or compromise. That is a temporary illusion that people of the Western culture are encouraged and fooled into believing. The Prophet Muhammad defined the state of peace and tolerance as a moment when the entire world submits to Allah and embraces Islam, and that is the way that Islam defines peace and tolerance. In Islam, the way to achieve peace is through settlement, jihad, and the institution of the Sharia, Islamic law. Not compromise. Not tolerance of other religions. Not allowing non-Muslims to exist and live their lives as they wish. And before the state of universal Islamization, it is the duty of every Muslim male to wage war against infidels, not just by preaching and persuading. but by any means necessary, and as the world has seen, by extreme violence whenever possible. It is one of the core beliefs of Islam. The idea that Islam has any real degree of tolerance as defined in the Western worlds is not only fallacious but it is dangerous, especially to non-Muslims. If we were united and strong, we'd elect our own emir, leader, and give allegiance to him. Take my word, if 6 to 8 million Muslims unite in America, the country will come to us. Siraj Wahaj, a black convert to Islam and the recipient of some of the American Muslim community's highest honors, had the privilege of becoming the first Muslim to deliver the daily prayer in the U.S. House of Representatives. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 2. In Islamic states, where there is no formally recognized separation between religion and law, mosque and state, Sharia law is a cornerstone and is often implemented as the final and ultimate formulation of the law of God, not to be revised or reformulated by mere mortal and fallible human beings. Freedom does not exist in Islam. Only Islam exists in Islam. Ideally, Islam and its teachings would run the state and all laws would be based on criteria from the Quran. Islam is a revolutionary faith that comes to destroy any government made by man. Islam doesn't look for a nation to be in better condition than another nation. Islam doesn't care about the land or who own the land. The goal of Islam is to rule the entire world and submit all of mankind to the faith of Islam. Any nation or power in this world that tries to get in the way of that goal, Islam will fight and destroy. Maulana Abul Alam Maududi, founder of Pakistan's fundamentalist movement. Their goal is to make Islam a worldwide state-sanctioned religion led by religious leaders having complete power, forcibly suppressing opposition and criticism, regimenting all aspects of life based on Islamic teachings, and emphasizing Islam to the detriment of any and all other religions and secular beliefs. For people that have grown up with freedom and liberty, this is often a hard realization to comprehend. Islam as a religion requires mandatory implementation and participation as a way of life and is the goal of all Muslims. For Muslims, Islam is the only true religion. All other religions are false and an insult to Allah, Islam, the Prophet, Muhammad, and all Muslims. Under Islamic law, infidel religions and beliefs will not be tolerated. With Islam, there is no freedom of religion, there is no individual freedom, there is only Islam and the Islamic way of life. He who fights that Islam should be superior fights in Allah's cause. Muhammad, Prophet of Islam. By their acts, we shall know them and so we know them. Pamela Jella, 6th of November 2009. Once you understand this concept, it is easy to comprehend what Islam really is. As a religion, Islam is run by radical Muslims. They are the loudest and the most vocal on Islam. The radical Muslims are the true Muslims that dictate and control Islam. They are the ones that fight to get what they want based on Islamic law. This webpage aims to show what they have done, what they are doing now, and the role they want for Islam in the future. The term, radical Islam, is often used when describing Islam. It is a deceptive term in that it assumes there is a more moderate and peaceful version of Islam. There is not. Islam is a radical ideology on its own as can be seen in its doctrine. There is no need to use the word radical as though there was a non-radical form of Islam. There is only one Islam and it is at war with the rest of the world for planetary control and domination. It is not just a war with an ideology, but with a people, including their elderly, their women, and their children. There is no war with a separate entity of Islam called radical Islam. The war is with all of Islam. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, whether you believe it or not, Islamic terrorists are the cause for almost all of the world's terrorist attacks. There are always detractors that will advance the notion that these Islamic terrorists are not true Muslims, but such is not the case. These terrorists are dedicated Muslims and serious students of Islam and its teachings. They understand what Islam is, what it means to be a defender of Allah and of Islam, and what is required to be a good Muslim. Remember, Muslims believe that Islam is the only true religion, superior to all other religions and beliefs. They also believe there are no innocent people other than Muslims, therefore killing non-innocents is acceptable to Allah as some legitimate form of retribution, as they believe they are on a mission with orders directly from Allah as written in the Quran to destroy anything they see as a threat or an insult to Islam and Allah. Unbelievers are not worthy of living, they deserve to die. Examine a somewhat hidden concept of Islam. To advance the cause of Islam is to implement the complete domination of Islam over all other religions, with the goal being the eventual elimination of other religions. When a Muslim dies while attempting to advance the cause of Islam, including by warfare and killing, it is not considered suicide, but a glorious act worthy of a secured place in paradise. Islam is unique among major world religions in this concept. The Quran teaches salvation through fighting and killing non-Muslims. We see this reality whenever a suicide bomber strikes. Muslims are quick to heap praise on the terrorist and on the family of the suicide bomber. There is nothing but contempt given to the victims. There is one historical precedent rarely discussed about Islam that helps to explain the terrorist mentality commonly associated with Islam. The bloody legacy of Muhammad is a constant challenge for anyone living within the borders of Islamic belief. The violence that Muslim armies would level on people across North Africa, the Middle East, Europe, and Asia as far as India is a tribute to a founder who condoned slavery, rape, murder and forced conversion in the cause of spreading the rule of his religion. This concept established by Muhammad as a fundamental tool to spread Islam is certainly the basis for terror campaigns against Western infidels and the general apathy that Muslims around the world have to the violence against non-Muslims. There are a lot of myths about Islam as to whether it is a religion of peace and tolerance and what that actually means. The following link addresses 10 of those myths. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 3. Why we fear Islam, why we should fear Islam. As Americans who were brought up in a predominantly Judeo-Christian society, when we look at others, it is common to see other people that worship other religions as just peaceful people, and we want to believe they only want to live in peace as we do. They live their day-to-day lives much like us. Going to work, coming home, spending the weekends doing chores that could not be done during the week. We see pretty much all people as equal. That is not the way Muslims see us. Make no mistake, non-Muslims are clearly seen as kafirs, second-class citizens that should be subjugated under the control of Islam. After all, Islam means submission, and that is exactly what the religion means to do to non-Muslims. And until we have the courage to understand and know the real history of Islam and how Muslims have treated non-Muslims, we are going to continue to die by the edge of the Islamic sword. Very few Americans actually know anything about how Islam has changed the world and how many hundreds of millions of non-Muslims have suffered and died under the tyranny of Islam. The following video will explain this history and the extremely violent nature of Islam. Just remember, Islam is the only religion that proudly makes videos of the beheading non-Muslims. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 4. Under Islamic law, there are guidelines for beating your wife. For those liberals that love to make excuses for Muslims and blame the Jews, America, or anyone else they like to blame for Islamic hatred, please enjoy this explanation of the guidelines for beating your wife entitled, How to Beat Your Wife. Believe it or not, there is actually a specific etiquette for a man to beat his wife. In Islam, a woman must be honored by a good beating for her own good. This is necessary in order to instill discipline. If you are pro-Islam, then you are by definition you understand the necessity for beating your wife when she does not perform as she should. This makes training your new 9 to 12-year-old bride to service her new husband when he wants to be serviced, as is the custom in Islam, very easy. As an Islamic man, If your wife ever refuses to have sex when you want, you are free to beat her until she will never entertain the thought of refusing to have sex with you again. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 5. Islam and Muslims are responsible for the African slave trade. What most people do not realize is that the slave trade that brought Africans from Africa to North and South America and throughout parts of Europe was due to the tireless efforts of Muslims and in accordance with Islamic law. A Muslim hero no Muslim is speaking out against this criminal. Instead, they hold him in high regard as a hero and worthy Muslim. A loyal and proud follower of Islam. In the religion of Islam, this is a good Muslim. What are Muslims to take from this? What are non-Muslims to take from this? This is just another example showing Islam and its hatred of everything not Muslim. This is Islam. There is no God worthy of worship except Allah. Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger from Allah. Islam is the true religion and the only religion acceptable to Allah. Michael Storms, average typical Muslim, follower of Hamza Yusuf. This is what Islam teaches. Some other religions believe they are the only way to heaven, but Islam is the only religion that openly and actively believes in the subjugation and or the elimination of all other religions by killing non-believers, forced conversions, or enslavement to Muslims as being the acceptable solutions to other religions. In the end, all that is allowed is Islam. As stated by Imam Anjan Chowdhury, the following statements accurately describe the true beliefs of Islam. Just do what we say and everything will be fine. All land is Muslim land. I will never condemn a Muslim. Sharia law should be the law of the land and forced on all people. They may say one thing to you in front of CNN, but I can assure you behind your backs they are standing with their Muslim brother and sisters. It is an Islamic obligation. Imam Anjan Chowdhury. The Sharia is the divine law sent by Allah. It is justice for mankind. It is a noble thing to invite someone to a superior way of life. Imam Anjan Chowdhury. Islam is an absolute ideology based on total submission to its teachings and authority. Being an authoritarian doctrine, Islam does not accept opposing views or ideas. There is no tolerance of other religions or beliefs. Muslims are obligated to embrace terrorist actions against non-Muslims. Mosques are not houses of worship. They are houses of terrorism. Hatred is preached as divine prophecy against all things not Muslim. Islamic law actually places a lesser value on human beings that are non-believers. Muslims keep saying that Allah is a merciful God. The following is a perfect example showing how Islam sees this quality in their God. Ishaq 327, Allah said, a prophet must slaughter before collecting captives. A slaughtered enemy is driven from the land. Muhammad, you crave the desires of this world, its goods and the ransom captives would bring. But Allah desires killing them to manifest the religion. This does not seem to be the actions of a merciful and loving God, but it does show what Muslims believe and what doctrine dictates how they live their lives. More on the violence that Muslims believe that Allah has commanded them to inflict on non-believers can be seen by clicking here. If you read the passage and actually think about what it says, it does seem like the teachings of Islam was not actually revealed by God to Muhammad, but rather inspired by Muhammad's selfish desire to legitimize the violence he visited on his victims as a warlord with hopes of conquest and the accumulation of riches. You just do not see many religions where God advocates murder and the ransom of captives. Usually, actions of this nature are considered wrong, but in Islam, it is not only acceptable, but encouraged as a necessary aspect of spreading the religion of Islam. Islam does not coexist with democracy. Islam will never accept other religions, and it is a highly dangerous, vicious ideology. Anyone that understands what Islam really is does not want in my country. Anybody who wants to believe in Islamic ideology should go and live in an Islamic country and be happy there. I am tired of the whining of them in my country. They demand and demand, but no Christian has any rights in Islamic countries. Here we clearly hear the difference in Islamic law and local law. They do not respect local law. To these hardcore Muslims, local laws mean nothing. There is only Islamic law. There is only Islam. Nothing else matters. No one else matters. Life had such little value to these Muslims, especially non-Muslim life. This is Islam. The way it has been, the way it is, and the way it will continue to be. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 6. The threat of Islam. Warning from a former Muslim. I was born and raised as Muslim. My whole family is still Muslim. I know every genetic code of Muslim. I know Islamic brain. I live and breathe with them. I am an insider. I left Islam when I understood that Islam is a sick and evil religion. The following are the Islamic message to the West. To the infidels of the West. The constitution for the new Islamic republics of Euro-Arabia and Umar Islamia is under construction. We will fight the infidel to death. Meanwhile, American laws will protect us. Democrats and leftists will support us. N.G.O.S will legitimize us. CAIR will incubate us. The ACLU will empower us. Western universities will educate us. Mosques will shelter us. OPEC will finance us. Hollywood will love us. Kofi Annan and most of the United Nations will cover our asses. Our children will immigrate from Pakistan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Indonesia, and even from India to the US and to the other Western countries. They will go to the West for education in full scholarship. America is paying and will continue to pay for our children's educations and their upbringing in state-funded Islamic schools. We will use your welfare system. Our children will also send money home while they are preparing for jihad. We will take the advantage of American kindness, gullibility, and compassion. When time comes, we will stab them in the back. We will say one thing on the camera and teach another thing to our children at home. We will give subliminal messages to our children to uphold Islam at any cost. Our children in America will always care more about Islamic countries' interest than us' interest. We will teach our children Islamic supremacy from the very childhood. We will teach them not to compromise with infidel. Once we do that from the very early age, our children won't hesitate to be martyr. We will take over the Europe first and then us will be the next. We already have a solid ground in the UK, Holland, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Germany, and now in the US. Our children will marry Caucasian in Europe and in America. We will mix with intricate fabric of the Western society but still will remember to jihad when time comes. Who are we? We are the sleeper cells. We will raise our children to be loyal to Islam and Muhammad only. Everything else is secondary. At the time of the real fight we will hold our own children as our armor. When American or Israeli troops shoot at us, the world will be watching. Imagine the news in the world: death of Muslim babies by infidels. We know CNN, ABC, CBS are broadcasting live. Al Jazeera will pour gasoline on the fire. The news will spread like wildfire. Americans killed 6 babies, 10 babies, and Jews killed 2 women. Keep your nukes in your curio cabinets. Keep your aircraft carrier or high-tech weaponry in the showcase. You can't use them against us because of your own higher moral standard. We will take the advantage of your higher moral standard and use it against you. We won't hesitate to use our children as suicide bomber against you. Visualize the news flash all over the world. Muslim mother is sobbing, crying. Her babies are killed by Jews and Americans. The whole world is watching live. Hundreds of millions of Muslims all around the world are boiling. They will march through Europe. We will use our women to produce more babies who will in turn be used as armor/shield. Our babies are the gift from Allah for jihad. West manufactures their tanks in the factory. We will manufacture our military force by natural means, by producing more babies. That is the way it is cheaper. You infidels at this site cannot defeat us. We are 1.2 billion. We will double again. Do you have enough bullets to kill us? On the camera, we will always say, Islam is the religion of peace. We will say, jihad is actually inner jihad. Moderate Muslims will say there is no link between Islam and terrorism, and the West will believe it because the West is so gullible. Moderate Muslims all over the world will incubate jihadists by their talk by defending Islam. Using the Western legal system we will assert our Sharia laws, slowly but surely. We will increase in number. We will double again. You will be impressed when you meet a moderate Muslim personally. As your next-door neighbor, co-worker, student, teacher, engineer, professionals, you may even like us. You will find us well-mannered, polite, humble, that will make you say, wow, Muslims are good and peaceful people. But, we will stab you in your back when you are sleeping, as we did on 9/11. There will be more 9/11 in Europe and in America. We will say, we do not support terrorism, but America got what it deserved. Muslims, CARE, ISNA, MPAC and other international Islamic organization will unite. We will partner with leftist, ACLU, with Kofi Annan, and the UN, and if we have to then even with France. Fasten your seatbelt. The war of civilizations has just begun. We will recite Quran and say Allahu Akbar before beheading infidels, as we have been doing it. We will videotape those and send it to all infidels to watch. They will surrender. Islam means surrender. We will use your own values of kindness against you. You are destined to lose. Must be very depressing for you, isn't it? Allahu Akbar, as we say just before beheading. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 7. 21st Century Islamic Warfare, Muslims versus the West. Let's see the effectiveness of Islamic warfare. The rule has changed. There is a new game in town. Bill Clinton ordered 50 Tomahawk cruise missiles costing $100 million to destroy 50 mud houses that belong to Osama's family. What stupidity. What a poor return on investment. And then Bush went into Iraq. In return, Osama's attack on the U.S. cost 19 martyrs and less than $500,000. Cost to the West, over 3,000 dead. At least $1 trillion economical loss in 1 year. This includes the ripple effect. Osama's return on investment with respect to life equals 3,000 by 150-fold. Osama's return on investment dollar equals $1 trillion times 2,000-fold. That is modern warfare. The West will lose. Allahu Akbar. Islam will rule the world. There is nothing you can do. Even if the per capita gross domestic product of the world drops to half of its present level as a consequence of Islamic laws in place all over the world, but still Islam will rule the world. From your point of view, we bring to the world to the Dark Ages, so be it. But still Islam wins, West loses. Are you sure you want to play this game? Jihad. 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 You are destined to lose. Allahu Akbar. Saudi Arabia's $100 billion investment over the last 3 decades on over 60,000 madrasas and schools all over the Islamic world is finally paying off. While the West was busy inventing medicine, increasing life expectancy, elevating human suffering, decoding human gene to find cure for cancer, heart disease, etc., launching space shuttle, inventing internet, working on new laws/theory for human rights, developing better economical models for a more prosperous world, while ACLU was gaining control over common sense, while American ingenuity was benefiting the rest of the world, we Muslims were busy producing over 200 million out of 1.4 billion, walking, talking, non-thinking, West-hating, pre-programmed, suicidal, parasitic, terrorist robots. You can't win. The genie is out of the bottle. We will use Americans' kindness, fairness, compassion, freedom of speech and non-discriminatory policy against them. We will stab them in the back. What are you going to do? You are doomed. This is no exaggeration. This is what Western civilization is fighting. All non-Islamic culture is on the line. To say that Islam is a danger to non-Muslims is not a stretch. In 30 years, Muslims will be a majority in some countries in Europe. For those that do not remember, Lebanon was a Christian country until Muslim immigration was unchecked. Once the Muslim population reached a critical mass, it exploded in violence and war. The truth in America is silenced by political correctness. The fear of hurting someone's feelings trumps facing the truth. Make no mistake, this flaw will be used against America. The freedoms we cherish and take for granted will be used against Americans until these freedoms no longer exist. Muslims know they are at war with the Western world. Unfortunately, there are so many in the West that refuse to accept this fact, instead choosing to bury their head in the sand, hoping Muslims that will never resort to violence. History shows this to be a dangerous attitude. Islam does not have much compassion for people that do not acknowledge that Islam is the only true religion. At some point, there will be a winner, but at the expense of war and bloodshed. Whoever wants it the most and is not afraid to fight and do what is necessary to win will be the winner. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 8. Islamic control over every aspect of everyday life. We made the statement that Islam is against personal freedoms such as the freedoms we enjoy in America. Get ready for this. Iran is now implementing official Islamic haircut regulations. You read that right, there is now an official Islamic-approved hairstyle for men in Iran. Jayla Kadir, the director at the Hijab and Chastity Festival, has announced a guideline for men's haircuts. All Muslim men in Iran will have to follow the catalogue and may not make their own style. The haircut catalogue is part of the Iranian government's long-running battle against Western cultural influence. Every summer, the country's morality police renew their crackdown on un-Islamic dress and styles, including loose veils on women and long hair or ponytails on men. Special police squads have stopped or arrested unmarried couples, women wearing too much makeup and people playing Western music. The new law will not allow a Muslim to have mullet or spiked hair. Mr. Kadir said, "We don't have a backward attitude. We are trying to present new hairstyles while preserving tradition and observing Iranian culture. This is how we will fight back against the Western cultural invasion." These hairstyles were designed according to aesthetic science, the type of neck, beard, length of chin, and the culture of the provinces. The religious police of Iran will monitor all barbershops and make sure everyone complies with the new rule. This is just one example of how in Islam, there is no freedom, just Islam. These haircut standards are based on Islam tradition and therefore have a basis in Islamic law. This is no different than when the Taliban took control of Afghanistan and set the requirement that all Muslim men grow beards and forced women into burqas. Just wait until there is a Muslim majority in Europe in the next 20 to 30 years and the local religious police unit that started as some kind of neighborhood watch committee implements roving patrols. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 9. The truth about moderate Islam. Muslims are not allowed to choose what parts of Islam and the Quran they wish to accept. It is not up for debate. Islam teaches the Quran to be the direct word of Allah that descended direct from heaven. What Islam considers to be moderate Muslims are the Muslims who do not actively participate in the physical part of jihad, fighting, bombing, etc. These moderates are moderate only because they do not actively fight or directly engage themselves in terrorism, but they do support the goals of jihad and the terrorists. They all may claim to hate the acts of Islamic terrorists, but they agree with the ultimate goal, which is the Islamification of the world. Just because Muslims claim to be moderate does not mean they do not believe in the precepts of the Quran. They do. Consider the 1.3 billion moderate Muslims to the 13 million, 1% extremists. If the 1.3 billion Muslims wanted to end Islamic terrorism, does anyone think they could not do so? Who do you think funds these terrorist groups and how do they do it? It is the ordinary moderate Muslims who contribute to all the phony Muslim charities that serve as fronts for terrorist organizations. After 9/11, did you see anywhere near 6 million Muslim Americans condemning it? It was on the news every night, but we only saw a relative small handful of Muslims speaking out against the 9/11 attack, a few dozen at best. Of those that did speak against it, most were worried how non-Muslims would view Islam by making the claim that murder and terrorism was not what Islam teaches. Now ask the next logical question. How many Muslims were privately cheering at the sight of the destruction of the World Trade Center? What no one wants to admit is that Islam has been a radical and violent religion since its inception. It was never intended to be a religion based on peace. It was designed as a religion of control and submission. History bears witness that Islam and the Quran was merely a scheme to legitimize the violence committed by Muhammad and his band of criminals in their endeavor to engage in all manner of crimes to enrich and empower themselves over local populations. It is no secret that Muhammad and his followers raped, plundered, beheaded and murdered under the approval of the Quran. So much of the Quran is nothing more than an excuse or exemption from civilized laws that allow crimes such as pedophilia and the killing of infidels, who are not considered to be innocent, to go unpunished. Founded by a violent radical that never advocated peace, Muhammad, the founder and prophet of Islam, was nothing more than a highway robber, assassin, mass murderer, sexual pervert, rapist, and warlord. He called for and engaged in the mass slaughter of those who refused to convert or submit to Islam. He was a notorious pedophile, enjoying sex with many very young girls and teenagers captured in raids and made into sex slaves. Muhammad kidnapped, raped, bought and sold slaves with regularity. One only needs to remember the story of how Muhammad enslaved Safiya and slaughtered her family at the Battle of Khaybars as proof of these claims. Whenever Islamic terrorists strike, moderate Muslims always revert to the claim that all Muslim terrorists are not true Muslims. The fact is, they are living as Muhammad lived and following the example and teachings set forth by Muhammad for all Muslims to follow. Muslims are generally ignorant of the life story of the Prophet Muhammad and have been brainwashed to believe that Muhammad was the greatest man ever to appear on earth by concealing his violent and inhuman deeds. If Muhammad was alive today and was not currently revered as the Prophet of Allah, he would obviously be put into prison in just about any country of the world for his long history of terrorist acts, murders, theft, perverted sex crimes, and crimes against humanity. Many countries today would quickly execute him for being a dangerous and violent sexual predator and murderer. There is nothing holy about Muhammad other than what devotion and sanctity Muslims are quick to place upon him. His goal of worldwide Islamic domination is as alive today as it was 1,400 years ago. It is supported by all Muslims because Muslims are not allowed to speak against Islam or the Prophet Muhammad. The actions of Muhammad are sacred and are Islam. A great deal of effort in all mosques around the world supports the premise that if Islam is good for today, it is good for all times. If Muslims did not believe this concept, they would not be Muslim. To create and maintain the illusion of Muhammad as the greatest man in history and the true prophet of God, every year hundreds of people are brutally beaten and murdered by Muslim mobs on the allegation of blasphemy, and moderate Muslims everywhere stand quiet and unapologetic, thereby giving silent approval to the atrocities committed by their brothers in the name of Islam. Muslims fail to publicly condemn these acts and these terrorists as non-Muslims have. One may wonder what the foundation for this lack of condemnation is. There is a concept or tradition that prevents speaking against other Muslims. According to Muhammad, a Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. He neither oppresses him nor humiliates him nor looks down upon him. All things of a Muslim are inviolable for his brother in faith, his blood, his wealth, and his honor. A Muslim is forbidden to speak against the will of another Muslim. There is a mandate in Islam for Muslims to be loyal to fellow Muslims and Islam. This means that disloyalty to all things non-Muslim, including the American people and their government, is not only acceptable, but required to be a good Muslim. The foremost duty of Islam is to depose all unbelievers from the leadership of man, and to take the leadership of the world and place it under the control of Islam and enforce the Islamic way of life, which is its permanent feature. Under Islamic law, Muslims are forbidden to convert from Islam to another religion. If a Muslim discards his religion, kill him. Muhammad, Prophet of Islam. If a Muslim believes in active rebellion against secular or non-Muslim rule, does not change the fact that Islam is defined by allegiance to Allah and Muhammad. Therefore any extraneous loyalty that is in contradiction to what Allah has already established would be strictly forbidden. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 10. Deceit, thy name is Islam. Surah 354, Allah was the best of deceivers. When you see quotes like this, it shows that Islam is a religion of deception and revenge, not peace and tolerance. Al-Taqiyya is a policy whereby a Muslim may lie, deceive or omit critical truths if it promotes the spreading of Islam and the conquest of the non-Muslim world. This is the Islamic principle of lying for the sake of Allah. Falsehoods told to prevent denigration of Islam, to protect oneself, or to promote the cause of Islam are sanctioned by the Quran, including lying under penalty of perjury in testimony before the United States Congress, lying or making distorted statements to the media such as claiming that Islam is a religion of peace and deceiving fellow Muslims when the one lying has deemed them to be apostates. Islam is the only religion that allows lying and deceit as part of their doctrine. Most religions promote honesty, integrity, and love for fellow man, but not Islam. Deceit is part of Islam. It is an important part of the interaction with people of other religions. Non-Muslims feel compelled to communicate with others in an honest manner, and Muslims allow themselves the option of lying in any communication or negotiation as a tenet of their religion. This deceit is a product of Islamic teachings of its followers to disrespect non-Muslims as they are not worthy of honesty. All but a very few of the most fundamental Muslims consider the act of al-taqiyya or lying to non-Muslims to be a good work. This is very important when one remembers that, in Islam, salvation is determined by good works. A Muslim must do his good works consistently and repeatedly to earn his salvation, with the greatest work being that of dying while fighting non-Muslims. For this reason, it is a very common practice for Muslims, especially leaders, to lie about the war against non-Muslims. These lies come in many forms, such as denying that Islam is at war against non-Muslims, that the Quran teaches salvation through fighting and killing non-Muslims, feigning sympathy for the 9/11 attack, or Muslim countries denying that they have military intentions against Israel, the US, or other non-Muslim countries. Other Muslim peace protesters in the US earning their salvation by lying and trying to interfere with the US and Israel's efforts to defend themselves? Is the Muslim sympathy for the US concerning 9/11 nothing more than earning the salvation of the Muslims by feigning sympathy for the US? Are the Muslim leaders and official speakers using al-taqiyya to earn salvation by lying to the US media about them fighting because they are being oppressed by Israel, when there are plenty of Muslims who are citizens in Israel, have good jobs, have their own successful and prosperous businesses, who vote, and are even in the Israeli government? Most Muslims are familiar with the principles of Islam that will justify lying in situations where they sense the need to do so. Among these are, war is deception. The necessities justify the forbidden. If faced by two evils, choose the lesser of the two. It should come as no surprise to anyone that Muslims believe the spread of Islam is an absolute necessity. Lying is a completely acceptable tactic used to help Islam gain a foothold in a local population. Any and all unethical behaviors are acceptable to help Islam gain domination over all people and all other religions. One passage from the Hadith quotes Muhammad as saying, "The sons of Adam are accountable for all lies except those uttered to help bring reconciliation between Muslims." Surah 3:28, "Let not the believers take for friends or helpers unbelievers rather than believers. If any do that, in nothing will there be help from Allah, except by way of precaution, prevention, that you may guard yourselves from them, prevent them from harming you. But Allah cautions you to remember Himself, for the final goal is to Allah." According to this verse, a Muslim can pretend to befriend infidels, in violation of the teachings of Islam, and display adherence with their unbelief to prevent them from harming him. Muslim scholars do not say Muslims can lie any time they want to, but rather they can lie to non-Muslims for purposes of war, safety, and advancing Islam. Muslims can communicate something with apparent sincerity, when in reality they may have just the opposite agenda in their hearts. Islam permits Muslims to lie any time that they perceive that their own well-being, or that of Islam, is threatened. This can be seen any time it seems that Islam is allowing other religions to exist. Islam only sees Islam as the one and only true religion. All other religions are an insult to Islam. You can look at it like this. Being honest with someone or some group is a sign of respect. Muslims have 1,400 years of history seeing non-Muslims to be less than honorable people, even subhuman, that are not worthy of Muslim respect. The spread of Islam and world domination of Islam is their ultimate goal. Lies and deception are merely tools to be used to destroy anything that restricts, prevents, or gets in their way of achieving this goal. Concerning international politics, the question is, can Muslims be trusted to keep their end of the agreements that they sign with non-Muslims? It is a known Islamic practice that when Muslims are weak they can agree with most anything, but once they become strong and it is in their best interest, then their religious beliefs allow them to negate what they formerly promised in accordance with Islamic doctrine and apparently with Allah's blessing. With Muslim populations increasing in Europe, it would be in the best interest of Europeans to understand this fact. Agreements made with infidels are rarely honored, and that level of contempt is how Muslims view non-Muslims. For example, any agreements with regard to Sharia law only extending to Muslims will soon be null and void when Muslim populations expand to 30 to 40% of the local population. An example of Islamic deception is that Muslim activists always quote the passages of the Quran from the early part of Muhammad's ministry while living in Mecca. These texts are peaceful and exemplify tolerance towards those that are not followers of Islam. They are all fully aware that most of these passages were cancelled and replaced by passages that came after he migrated to Medina. The replacement verses reflect all of the prejudice, intolerance, and advocating of violence upon unbelievers. Muslim leaders can use this loophole in their religion to absolve them from any permanent commitment. What Muslim activists say to spread Islam may not always be the complete truth. When dealing with Muslims, what they say is not the issue. The real issue is what they actually mean in their hearts. In other words, it is best to remember their history of past actions rather than to listen to their false promises of peace. They may say one thing to you in front of CNN, but I can assure you behind your backs, they are standing with their Muslim brother and sisters. It is an Islamic obligation. Imam Anjem Chowdhury. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 11. The Muslim Brotherhood. We fight them over there so we don't have to fight them over here. It is too late. They are already here. The Muslim Brotherhood is one of those extreme groups that have a lot of support from moderate Muslims. Here is some information on this group. The Muslim Brotherhood is a Sunni transnational movement and the largest political opposition organization in many Arab states. The world's oldest and largest Islamic political group, it was founded in 1928, in Egypt by the schoolteacher Hussein al-Banna. The Brotherhood's stated goal is to instill the Quran and Sunnah as the sole reference point for ordering the life of the Muslim family, individual, community, and state. Since its inception in 1928, the movement has officially and publicly opposed violent means to achieve its goals. However, the Brotherhood's goal is the same as every other Islamic group's: the spread of Islam throughout the world with all of the peace, love, and tolerance contained within its doctrine. This is not an organization that helps the poor and sends aid to disaster victims. The Muslim Brotherhood is violent enough that it is banned in Egypt, and members have been arrested for their participation in it. The Brotherhood believes the Quran and Sunnah constitute a perfect way of life and social and political organization that God has set out for man. They called for the establishment of Sharia law. Their belief is that all governments must be based on this system. Like all Islamic groups, the Muslim Brotherhood strongly opposes Western culture, democracy, and freedom. The Muslim Brotherhood is a far-reaching network with many sub-organizations. They maintain control of many Islamic organizations. This is due to the freedoms we have in this country. Freedom to assemble and freedom of religion are two of our basic rights. After seeing the map, you need ask yourself the following questions. Do these Islamic groups like the Muslim Brotherhood care anything about the rights of non-Muslims? Do they care about freedom of religion outside of Islam? What are the objectives of these groups? Do these groups want to assimilate into American culture, or do these groups want to force Islamic law into the everyday lives of all Americans? In the 1,400 years of existence, when has Islam ever been passive and peaceful once it gained solid footing in a country? Look at what is currently happening in Europe. It would be in America's best interest to keep an eye on the Islamification of Europe's view of the future. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 12. Welcome to Islam, Religion of Peace. Since 11th of September 2001, there have been a string of terrorist attacks from Islamic terrorists almost daily. A good website to take a look at is Islam, Religion of Peace. This website had some very good examples of the peaceful practice of Islam. The number of attacks committed by Islamic terrorists is over 26,016, and rising. Please note that you do not see people from other religions committing terrorist attacks as you do by the followers of Islam. How many more examples do you want? How many more examples do you need? The truth is evident for all to see. To fully understand the danger of Islam, you need to have the courage to accept the truth about Islam. Take a good look at Hamas' Charter of 1988, and the truth about the Palestinian people. The way that Islam is practiced by today's Islamic leaders, there is nothing that remotely resembles anything peaceful or civilized, at least by Western standards. O Allah, destroy America, as it is controlled by Zionist Jews. Allah will avenge, in the name of his prophet, the colonist settlers who are the descendants of monkeys and pigs. Ikram Sabri, Mufti of the Palestinian Authority, weekly sermon in the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, Voice of Palestine, 11th of July 1997. O Allah, strike the apostate rulers, O Allah, kill them one after the other, sparing none. Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, 7th of January 2004. If the Jewish state becomes a fact, the Arabs will drive the Jews who live in their midst into the sea. Hussein al-Banna, founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, 1948. The Jews are a cancer which is liable to spread again at any moment. Hussein Nasrallah, leader of Hezbollah. There is no solution to the conflict except with the disappearance of Israel. Hussein Nasrallah, leader of Hezbollah. If they all gather in Israel, it will save us the trouble of going after them worldwide. Hussein Nasrallah, leader of Hezbollah. The honor of Islam lies in insulting the unbelief and the unbelievers, kafirs. One who respects kafirs dishonors Muslims. Sheikh Ahmed Sirhindi, in a publication by Islamic Jihad. Very soon, Allah willing, Rome will be conquered. just like Constantinople was. Yunus al-Astal, prominent Muslim cleric and Hamas member of the Palestinian parliament, speaking about the long-term goals of Islam. When jihad becomes an individual duty, it applies to women too, because women do not differ from men when it comes to individual duties, the brothers of apes and pigs, the Jews, who should taste the bitterness of death. Yunus al-Astal, speaking about the need for suicide bombers and the importance of martyrdom in a sermon on 11th of April 2008. The most exalted form of jihad is fighting for the sake of Allah, which means sacrificing one's soul by fighting the enemies head-on, even if it leads to martyrdom. Yunus al-Astal, prominent Muslim cleric and Hamas member of the Palestinian parliament, in an interview on 23 June 2007. The rallying to kill the Americans and their allies, civilians and military, is an individual duty for every Muslim who can do it in any country in which it is possible to do it. To comply with God's order to kill the Americans and plunder their money wherever and whenever they find it. We also call on Muslim ulama, leaders, youths, and soldiers to launch the raid on Satan's U.S. troops and the devil's supporters allying with them. Osama bin Laden, leader of Al-Qaeda, Jihad Against Jews and Crusaders, 1998. As far as the matters of religion are concerned, we know for sure that only Islam is the true religion in the eyes of God. In 3:85 it is mentioned that God will never accept any religion other than Islam. As far as the building of churches or temples is concerned, how can we allow this when their religion is wrong? And when worship is also wrong? Thus we will surely not allow such wrong things in our country. Dr. Zaki Unk, Islamic speaker and writer on the subject of Islam. Where is the tolerance and respect for other religions? We are told by Muslims and their Western apologists that Islam is the religion of peace. Islam's primary sources are the Sira, biography, Tariq, history, hadith, report, and the Quran, recital. If Islam is really the religion of peace, its religious texts will reflect how peaceful it is towards non-believers. Here are 6 serious practitioners of Islam proving the peaceful nature of Islam. Terror plotters: Muhammad Irfan, Hamid al-Asma, Amjad Mahmood, Zahur Iqbal, Parvez Khan and Baziru Gassama are alleged to be part of a Birmingham-based terrorist cell. An Islamist fanatic plotted to snatch a British Muslim soldier from the streets and film him being beheaded, like a pig, in a lock-up garage. Parvez Khan, 37, built up a terrorist cell in Birmingham, England and planned to kidnap the soldier before filming his ghastly death for release to the media. The attack was designed to cause panic and fear amongst the army and the wider British public. These are 6 serious and true Muslims well versed in the teachings and doctrine of Islam, following in the spirit of Muhammad. These terrorists act well within the teachings of the Quran. As Islam grows in America, we can expect more acts of terrorism like this, proving that Islam is a religion of peace. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 13. Noteworthy achievements. Despite what you hear from the politically correct crowd, examine some of the facts about this so-called peaceful and tolerant religion. Consider the following. Remember the Muslim bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. Remember the Muslim bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. Remember the Muslim bombing of the Marine barracks in Lebanon. Remember the Muslim bombing of the military barracks in Saudi Arabia. Remember the Muslim bombing of the American embassies in Africa. Remember the Muslim bombing of the USS Cole. Remember the Muslim attack during the 1972 Olympics in Munich. Remember the Muslim attack on the Twin Towers on 9 September 2011. Remember the Muslim attack on London, England on 7 July 2005. Remember the Muslim attack using thousands upon thousands of car bombs used to kill civilians. Remember the Muslim suicide bombers used to kill civilians. Remember all the innocent lives that were lost in those vicious Muslim attacks. Every one of these actions were done in the name of Islam. How many times have we heard that the book of the Muslims, the Quran, professes peaceful teachings, tolerance, and love? How many of you have actually read the Quran? When you read the passages below from the Quran, maybe then you'll understand just what is really going on with Islam. It is the fastest growing religion in the world, and it is a very real danger. Despite what the left is preaching, the United States was built on Judeo-Christian principles. You will not find any such principles in the Bible as those seen below. So, read on, open your eyes, and ask yourself, how can Islam be a peaceful religion when it commands its followers to do the following? Revealing surahs or chapters in the Quran and directly from the Arabic text Quran, 2-191, and kill them wherever you find them, and drive them out from whence they drove you out, and persecution is severer than slaughter, and do not fight with them at the sacred mosque until they fight with you in it. But if they do fight you, then slay them, such is the recompense of the unbelievers. 3:28 Let not the believers take the unbelievers for friends rather than believers, and whoever does this, he shall have nothing of Allah, but you should guard yourselves against them, guarding carefully, and Allah makes you cautious of retribution from Himself, and to Allah is the eventual coming. 3:151 We will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve, because they set up with Allah that for which He has sent down no authority, and their abode is the fire, and evil is the abode of the unjust. 4:34 Men are the maintainers of women because Allah has made some of them to excel others, and because they spend out of their property. The good women are therefore obedient, guarding the unseen as Allah has guarded, and, as to those on whose part you fear desertion, admonish them, and leave them alone in the sleeping places and beat them. Then if they obey you, do not seek a way against them, surely Allah is high, great. 4:76 Those who believe fight in the way of Allah, and those who disbelieve fight in the way of the Satan. Fight therefore against the friends of the Satan, surely the strategy of the Satan is weak. 5:51 O you who believe! Do not take the Jews and the Christians for friends, they are friends of each other, and whoever amongst you takes them for a friend, then surely he is one of them, surely Allah does not guide the unjust people. 8:12 When your Lord revealed to the angels, I am with you, therefore make firm those who believe. I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Therefore strike off their heads and strike off every fingertip of them. 8:69 Eat then of the lawful and good things, which you have acquired in war, and be careful of your duty to Allah, surely Allah is forgiving, merciful. 9:5 When the sacred months are over, slay the idolaters wherever you find them. Arrest them, besiege them, and lie in ambush everywhere for them. If they repent and take to prayer and render the alms levy, allow them to go their way. 9:14 Fight them, Allah will punish them by your hands and bring them to disgrace, and assist you against them and heal the hearts of a believing people. 9:29 Fight those who do not believe in Allah, Jews and Christians, nor in the latter day, nor do they prohibit what Allah and His Apostle have prohibited, nor follow the religion of truth, out of those who have been given the book, until they pay the tax, jizya, in acknowledgement of all Islamic superiority, and they are in a state of subjection. 9:30 And the Jews say, Uzzair is the son of Allah, and the Christians say, the Messiah is the son of Allah. These are the words of their mouths, they imitate the saying of those who disbelieved before, may Allah destroy them, how they are turned away. 9:33 He it is who sent His Apostle with guidance and the religion of truth, that He might cause it to prevail over all religions, though the polytheists may be averse. 9:123 O you who believe! Fight those of the unbelievers who are near to you, and let them find in you hardness, and know that Allah is with those who guard against evil. 22:39 Permission to fight is given to those upon whom war is made because they are oppressed, and most surely Allah is well able to assist them. 3361, cursed, wherever they are found they shall be seized and murdered, horrible, murdering. 47:4, so when you meet in battle those who disbelieve, then smite the necks until when you have overcome them, then make them prisoners. 48:28, it is who sent his apostle with the guidance and the true religion that he may make it prevail over all the religions, and Allah is enough for a witness. 48:29, Muhammad is God's apostle. Those who follow him are ruthless to the unbelievers but merciful to one another. 61:9, it is who sent his apostle with the guidance and the true religion, that he may make it overcome the religions, all of them, though the polytheists may be averse. 62:6, O ye who are Jews! If ye claim that ye are favored of Allah to the exclusion of all mankind, then long for death, as believers do, if ye are truthful. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 14. Where in Islam do you find peace and tolerance? In the eyes of fundamentalist Islam, if you are not a follower of Islam, then you are not worthy of living. In fact, the practice of other religions is actually forbidden. Freedom of religion, that is the freedom to worship as you please, the very cornerstone of the freedoms on which America was founded, is nowhere to be found in Islamic doctrine. This is one of the reasons the West is so hated by the followers of Islam. On 11th of September 2005, Palestinians wave flags as they burn the synagogue in Netzarim in the Gaza Strip yesterday. Thousands of triumphant Palestinians poured into the abandoned Jewish settlements, setting buildings afit, ripping out window frames, and shooting in the air. I want to destroy everything here as they did the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's a symbol of occupation. Destroying it is a symbol of Islam. Mahmoud Malahi, a 21-year-old Palestinian speaking about destroying a synagogue in the name of Islam. I am telling you that my religion, Islam, doesn't tolerate other religions. It doesn't tolerate. The only one law which needs to be spread, it can be here or anywhere else, has to be Islam. Cleric Abdul Nasser Benbrooker in an interview with ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, in November 2005. Israel is well known to protect Muslim places of worship under its control. The very site mentioned, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is an outstanding example of this policy. It was not destroyed or even touched by Israel, and remains in perfect shape and in active use atop the Temple Mount. In total contradiction to the status of Jerusalem under Muslim rule, Israel guarantees freedom of religion and makes holy places accessible to peoples of all faiths. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 15. The attack on Mumbai. On 26 November 2008, when most Americans were getting ready for Thanksgiving, India was under a series of coordinated terrorist attacks across Mumbai, India's financial capital and its largest city. The attacks, carried out by armed men using automatic weapons and grenades, began on 26 November 2008 and ended on 29 November 2008 when Indian Security Forces, NSG, in Operation Black Tornado, regained control of all attack sites. At least 188 people were killed and at least 293 were injured in the attacks. American citizens and Jews were the primary targets. As usual and right on cue, all of the victims were non-threatening, unarmed civilians. This is Islam's favorite and primary targets. Men, women, and children, it does not matter. Unarmed, not a threat to anyone, they are preferred targets for Islamic terrorists. 8 of the main attacks occurred in South Mumbai, at Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, the Oberoi Trident, the Taj Mahal Palace and Tower, Leopold Cafe, Karma Hospital, the Orthodox Jewish-owned Nariman House, the Metro Cinema, and a lane behind the Times of India building behind Street Xavier's College. There was also an explosion at the Mazagon docks in Mumbai's port area, and a taxi blasted Vilpur. By the early morning of 28 November, police and security forces had secured all sites except for the Taj Mahal Palace. An action by India's National Security Guards on 29 November resulted in the conclusion of the Taj Mahal Palace encounter, ending all fighting in the attacks. Muhammad Adil Amir, the only terrorist captured alive, disclosed that the attackers were members of Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Pakistan-based militant organization, considered a terrorist organization by India, the United States, and the United Kingdom, among others. The Indian government said that the attackers came from Pakistan, and their controllers were in Pakistan. The attacks drew widespread condemnation across the world. This is terrorism, and we can see it is not confined to attacks on the United States. This is nothing but more evidence that proving that Islam is not a religion of peace and tolerance. How else are you supposed to interpret these actions? Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 16. September 11, 2001. Let us not forget the 19 hijackers that Islam holds in such high regard. The world of Islam refers to these terrorists as heroes. Even teachers in our schools like Ward Churchill and J. Benish, and so-called peace activists, like Kodepink and Cindy Sheehan, admire these people more than our own soldiers, thus proving that Islamic terrorism has many allies, friends, and supporters in America that work for America's destruction. American Airlines 11 Boeing 767 7:45 a.m. departed Boston for Los Angeles 8:45 a.m. crashed into North Tower of World Trade Center. Terrorists on that flight: Satam Suqami, Waleed Alshi, Wael Alshi, Mohammed Atta and Abdulaziz Al-Omari. American Airlines 77 Boeing 757 8:10 a.m. departed Dulles for Los Angeles 9:39 a.m. crashed into Pentagon. Terrorists on that flight: Khalid Al-Mahda, Majid Moqt, Nawaf Al-Hazmi, Salem Al-Hazmi and Hani Hanj. United Airlines 175 Boeing 767 7:58 a.m. departed Boston for Los Angeles 9:05 a.m. crashed into South Tower of World Trade Center. Terrorists on that flight: Marwan al-Shayhi, Faiz Rashid, Ahmed al-Khamdi, Hamza al-Khamdi and Mohand Alshi. United Airlines 93 Boeing 757 8:42 a.m. departed Newark for San Francisco 10:03 a.m. crashed in Stony Creek Township. Terrorists on that flight: Saeed al-Khamdi, Ahmed Hasnaui, Ahmed al-Nami and Zad Samir Jarrah. None of this could have happened without the inspiration of Islam, its doctrine of jihad, and the false promise of an impossible afterlife in paradise. The wreckage of the World Trade Center at Ground Zero is a monument to Islamic terrorism. These terrorists all used Islam as their excuse for terrorism. They consider the mass murder of thousands to be act of Islamic worship. And they would gladly do it again. Where in Islam do you find peace and tolerance? Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 17. Dancing in the streets. On 11th of September 2001, upon hearing of the Islamic attack on the United States, dancing in the streets and passing out candy in celebration was the order of the day in Palestinian neighborhoods. The cartoon of Prophet Muhammad by Kurt Westergaard that has gotten believers in Islam in such an uproar. They take offense to this cartoon, but only when it is published in a Danish newspaper, as they did not protest or riot when it was published in an Egyptian newspaper. They have no problem showing cartoons that are very disrespectful of other religions and beliefs, but somehow, they should be exempt. This is just another example of the superiority that Islam views itself having over all other religions. And to show the world how tolerant, peace-loving, and compassionate they are, Muslims have demanded that whatever offends them, be removed from this earth or they will blow them up. As proof how accurate this cartoon really is, Muslims all over the world are rioting, killing, and burning buildings. Take another good look at Hamas Charter of 1988. Modern-day Islam teaches that all other religions fall under the umbrella of Islam and are allowed only by the grace of the leaders of Islam. Kurt Westergaard, born 13th of July 1935, is a Danish cartoonist who created the controversial cartoon of the Muslim prophet Muhammad wearing a bomb as a turban. This cartoon was the most contentious of the 12 Jyllands-Posten Muhammad cartoons, which received strong and sometimes violent reactions from Muslims and others worldwide. Westergaard said that terrorism that received spiritual ammunition from Islam inspired him to draw the cartoon. On 12 February 2008, the Danish Security and Intelligence Service announced the arrest of 3 people, 2 Tunisians and 1 Dane of Moroccan origin, alleged to have been planning the murder of Westergaard. On Friday, 1st of January 2010, cartoonist Kurt Westergaard was the target of another assassination attempt by an axe-wielding Islamist. Apparently the Muslim who tried to hack the artist to death took issue with the implication that Islam is not a peaceful religion. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 18. Religion of Terrorism. Behold the true Nazi face of Islam. Islam is Nazism. Islam is Islamofascism. An Arab Muslim terrorist stated his Muslim beliefs on a suicide video made shortly before he committed an act of terrorism in the name of Islam. My message to the loathed Jews is that there is no God but Allah. We will chase you everywhere. We are a nation that drinks blood, and we know that there is no better blood than the blood of Jews. We will not leave you alone until we have quenched our thirst with your blood, and our children's thirst with your blood. Jihad is the only way to liberate Palestine, all of Palestine, from the impurity of the Jews. My dear mother, today I sacrifice my life, to be your intercessor on Judgment Day. Don't let me see you sad on my wedding day with the virgins of paradise. Examine what these terrorists of Islam see as an acceptable lifestyle based on the so-called peaceful teachings of Islam. Their statements and the subsequent acts of terrorism illustrate every fear that non-Muslims have with Islam. And these fears are well deserved. Terrorism is everything that Islam embraces. These are just more examples proving that Islam has been, is now, and forever will be their excuse for terrorism. When you meet your enemies who are polytheists, invite them to 3 courses of action. If they respond to any one of these, you also accept it and withhold yourself from doing them any harm. Invite them to accept Islam. If they respond to you, accept it from them and desist from fighting against them. If they refuse to accept Islam, demand from them the jizya. If they agree to pay, accept it from them and hold off your hands. If they refuse to pay the tax, seek Allah's help and fight them. Muhammad, Prophet of Islam, Sahih Muslim, Book 019, number 4294. He who withholds the jizya is an enemy of Allah and his apostle. Muhammad, Prophet of Islam. If you do not accept Islam, you need to pay us so you can be a second-class citizen. If you do not, we will kill you. How is this not a clear case of extortion under threat of death? This is the final word of Islam. Just believe as we say because we are right and you are wrong. If you do not live as we say, death is your punishment. Anyone who rejects our beliefs as their own leaves us with no other choice but to kill them in the name of Allah, Islam, and Muhammad. What are we to make of this display of education, intellect, and common sense? It is so clear that these people hated the core of their being. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 19. Islamic car bomb building, International Islamic Greeting of Peace. The Islamic terrorist has many weapons at his disposal, many of which fall into the category of improvised explosives. Any weapon that causes maximum damage to civilians with minimum exposure is going to be a weapon of choice. The car bomb offers a certain level of anonymity and effectiveness by allowing the bomber the ability to place a rather large bomb in a public area relatively easily. All that is required is access and time to place the vehicle in the desired location. Since at least 1967, Muslim terrorists have utilized thousands of car bombs in Israel and throughout the world to get across their message and spread their word of peace by targeting their favorite targets, non-threatening, unarmed civilians. We can expect more of this over the years until this terrorism is checked and contained. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 20. A German's view on Islam. A man whose family was a member of the German aristocracy prior to World War II owned a number of large industries and estates. When asked how many German people were true Nazis, the answer he gave can guide our attitude toward fanaticism. Very few people were true Nazis, he said, but many enjoyed the return of German pride, and many more were too busy to care. I was one of those who just thought the Nazis were a bunch of fools. So, the majority just sat back and let it all happen. Then, before we knew it, they owned us, and we had lost control, and the end of the world had come. My family lost everything. I ended up in a concentration camp and the Allies destroyed my factories. We are told again and again by experts and talking heads that Islam is the religion of peace and that the vast majority of Muslims just want to live in peace. Although this unqualified assertion may be true, it is entirely irrelevant. It is meaningless fluff, meant to make us feel better, and meant to somehow diminish the specter of fanatics rampaging across the globe on killing sprees and terrorist attacks in the name of Islam. The vast majority of Muslims do not control the direction of Islam. They are not in control of their religion. The fanatics are in control of Islam and the vast majority of Muslims are doing nothing to stop them. Fanatics rule Islam at this moment in history, as they always have. It is the fanatics who march and protest. It is the fanatics who wage any one of 50 shooting wars worldwide. It is the fanatics who systematically slaughter Christian or tribal groups throughout Africa and are gradually taking over the entire continent in an Islamic wave. It is the fanatics who bomb, behead, murder, or honor kill. It is the fanatics who take over mosque after mosque. It is the fanatics who zealously spread the stoning and hanging of rape victims and homosexuals. It is the fanatics who teach their young to kill and to become suicide bombers. And it is all done in the name of Islam, Muhammad, and Allah. The hard, quantifiable fact is that the peaceful majority of Muslims, the silent majority, is cowed and extraneous. Communist Russia was comprised of Russians who just wanted to live in peace, yet the Russian communists were responsible for the murder of more than 20 million Russians. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. China's huge population was peaceful as well, but Chinese communists managed to kill a staggering 70 million people. The average Japanese individual prior to World War II was not a warmongering sadist. Yet, Japan murdered and slaughtered its way across Southeast Asia in an orgy of killing that included the systematic murder of 12 million Chinese civilians, most killed by sword, shovel, and bayonet. They did so because they saw the Chinese civilians as worthless cowards. Now, ask yourself the following question: how does Islam view non-Muslims? And who can forget Rwanda, which collapsed into butchery? Could it not be said that the majority of Rwandans were peace-loving? History lessons are often incredibly simple and blunt, yet for all our powers of reason, we often miss the most basic and uncomplicated of points. Peace-loving Muslims have been made irrelevant by their silence. Peace-loving Muslims will become our enemy if they do not speak up, because like my friend from Germany, they will awaken one day and find that the fanatics own them, and the end of their world will have begun. Peace-loving Germans, Japanese, Chinese, Russians, Rwandans, Serbs, Afghans, Iraqis, Palestinians, Somalis, Nigerians, Algerians, and many others have died because the peaceful majority did not speak up until it was too late. As for us who watch it all unfold, we must pay attention to the only group that counts, the fanatics who threaten our way of life. Lastly, Anyone who doubts that the issue is serious and ignores this information without passing it on is contributing to the passiveness that allows the problems to expand. Do not say you have not been warned. Those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Fanaticism is a way of life in Islam. The leaders say whatever they need to in order to make a point. It does not matter if it is a lie. For example, Muslims are taught that Pepsi is an acronym indicating a secret method to funnel financial resources to help Israel survive against the threat of Islam. This is a total fabrication, but who cares? The fallacy of what is being said does not matter. The fanatical hate speech coming from the mullahs and the leaders of Islam is designed to enrage and unite Muslims against non-Muslims. A lie told enough becomes the perceived truth. Death is the end result of all of this, just as it was planned. If you think we are exaggerating, take a look at a few quotes. I am telling you that my religion, Islam, doesn't tolerate other religions. It doesn't tolerate. The only one law which needs to be spread, it can be here or anywhere else, has to be Islam. Cleric Abdul Nasser Benbrika stated in an interview with ABC, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, in November 2005. We have discovered how to hit the Jews where they are the most vulnerable. The Jews love life, so that is what we shall take away from them. We are going to win, because they love life and we love death. Hussein Nasrallah, Hezbollah's Secretary General. We tell them, inasmuch as you love life, the Muslim loves death and martyrdom. There is a great difference between he who loves the hereafter and he who loves this world. The Muslim loves death and strives for martyrdom. Mufti Sheikh Ikram Sabri, Chief Palestinian Authority Cleric. We love death more than you love life. Major Nidal Malik Hassan, who killed 13 and wounding of 30 fellow soldiers at Fort Hood, TX. We love death more than you love life. Adismaj Unjnin, part of a 911 call made in New York City after crashing his car while fleeing from federal agents who had confiscated his passport. We have come to you with people who love death more than you love life. Ansar Jund Allah, commander of Gaza Organization. If the West wants to have peace, then they have to accept Islamic rule. Abu Bakr Bashir, Muslim cleric from Indonesia. Muslims must educate their children to jihad and to hatred of the Jews, the Christians, and the infidels. Saudi preacher Sheikh Mohammed Salih al-Munajjid. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 21. The Nazi connection. The leaders of Islam have taken extreme Nazi doctrine and propaganda and they have incorporated it as a major component into Islam. The views that caused destruction throughout Europe and around the world are the same views that have infected Islam and form the basis for Islam today. Nazism is now the foundation for Islam. Their extreme views are based on the principles of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf and other Nazi propaganda. The photograph above was taken in Iran at a Hezbollah swearing-in ceremony. These are the same people that are being trained to kill Iraqi civilians in Iraq and Americans and other Westerners around the world. When you actively support insurgents like these, you actively support Nazi doctrine. In the 1930s, very few people thought that Hitler and the Nazis were a threat. History has shown that they were truly a danger. 75 million people died as a result of this lack of common sense and foresight. Just think what a danger to the world Iran will be when they obtain nuclear weapons. Now consider the threat with the Iranians believing they have a mandate from Allah to use those weapons. They already have a delivery system that can reach anywhere in the Middle East and many points in Europe. What happens when they place a nuclear device on board a ship and sail into New York Harbor? Or Baltimore Harbor? Or Miami? What happens then? Is the world going to be safer? Remember, these are the people with an extreme Nazi belief system that glorify the killing of others in the name of Islam, and they are working at a ferocious pace to acquire nuclear weapons. In America, our children watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Islam has a slightly different approach to childhood education. Muslims teach their children the values of terrorism and hate at a young age. Indoctrination into the ways of martyrdom is an important concept of Islam, and these lessons begin at an early age. This is what Islam refers to when they speak of teaching peace, love, and tolerance. This is the past, present, and future of Islam. Human sacrifice is the cornerstone of Islam. This is seen in suicide bombings all around the world. Killing yourself for others is glorified in Islam. They do not worship life, they worship death. By adhering to anti-Semitic views and texts, the practitioner of Islam is nothing more than a severe racist that uses their religion, Islam, as an excuse to kill in the name of Allah. They propagate lies and conspiracy theories and will say that suicide bombing is justified in so-called Palestine and around the world. It is the left wing that believes that you can reason with these people over religious differences. It does not matter what you are discussing. When dealing with these people, everything is based on Islam and therefore religious differences. The left wing thinks that you can reason with these people. The Nazis were not flexible on anything. Neville Chamberlain thought that he could negotiate with Hitler. He was wrong. Dealing with these people is nothing more than history repeating itself. These people have beliefs with extreme Nazi doctrine as a basis for their views, and they have incorporated these views into their view of Islam. This is what has become modern-day Islam. With all of their education from the hallowed halls of academia, here is a concept that the left wing just cannot seem to comprehend. You cannot negotiate with Nazis, Islamo-fascist, or terrorists. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 22. Where is the tolerance? Where is the compassion? Where is the religion of peace? Tragic are the consequences of Islamic thought. Have you ever seen a more hateful group of people? These are the people that keep saying that Islam is a religion of peace. By their own actions, as we have shown on this website, they demonstrate the hatred and violence that is now and has always been the true face of Islam. Every day is a celebration of hatred against America, Western civilization, and anything non-Muslim. They want to kill anyone and everyone that hold different religious views about anything. They oppose freedom and everything else that America stands for. These pictures clearly illustrate how Islam is a religion that promotes hate and violence in unprecedented levels that is on par with the genocide in Nazi Germany, and they want to replicate that level of killing around the world. Much of Islam can be quickly summed up on the following idea: accept the life and word of the Prophet Muhammad as the absolute and final truth, or we will kill you. There are several videos and books that show what Muslims believe about Islam. The spread of Islam a necessity. Nothing for Islam is evil. Anything done for the benefit of Allah, Islam, or Muhammad is acceptable. Islam is the one and only true religion over and above all other religions. All beliefs contrary to Islamic doctrine is against Allah and will not be tolerated. Infidels need to be converted or destroyed. No one can say we have not been warned. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 23. A few facts to consider: the hidden and unknown agenda. Marriage is not a requirement for a Muslim man to have sex with a non-Muslim woman. A Muslim man can legally rape a non-Muslim woman without any legal consequences or repercussions. The line between this and purchasing girls in the illegal sex slave trade is a very fine line. Islamic history is full of stories of women from other cultures kept as slaves to Muslim masters. Of course, in Islam, it is not illegal because the girl's consent does not matter. There is a courting ritual that is not openly discussed with non-Muslims. In Islam, old men can marry very young girls. This is a normal practice and is done without the girl's consent. She is just handed off to the man and she becomes his wife and his property. As his wife, she is expected to submit totally to her new husband that by Western standards amount to slavery. In this Islamic marriage tradition, it is acceptable for a 53-year-old man to marry and have sex with a girl as young as 9 years old without her consent. This tradition is based on the story of Muhammad marrying a 6-year-old orphan girl who was raped by Muhammad at 9 years old and is upheld by Sharia law. In Islam, this is considered an acceptable practice. In Western cultures and civilized society, this is commonly referred to as pedophilia. You can use your imagination to conclude what these Muslim men do to these girls behind closed doors where no one can hear them scream. Under Sharia law, a man can divorce his wife without any notice to his wife. The woman that was married to him and controlled by him since she was 9 years old, is thrown out on the street without any source of income. The woman also loses her children because the children belong to their father. It is this reality that keeps Muslim women obedient and totally submissive as sex slaves to their husbands. The acceptance of pedophilia and the sex slave-friendly principles and standards in Islam account for many of the reasons why Islam is the fastest-growing religion in the world. Next, we have an article written by a Muslim woman where she speaks from personal experience about Islamic treatment of women. Joys of Muslim women. In the Muslim faith, a Muslim man can marry a child as young as 1 year old and have sexual intimacy with this child, consummating the marriage by 9. The dowry is given to the family in exchange for the woman, who becomes his slave, and for the purchase of the private parts of the woman, to use her as a toy. Even though a woman is abused, she cannot obtain a divorce. To prove rape, the woman must have 4 male witnesses. Often after a woman has been raped, she is returned to her family and the family must return the dowry. The family has the right to execute her, an honor killing, to restore the honor of the family. Husbands can beat their wives at will and he does not have to say why he has beaten her. The husband is permitted to have, for wives, and a temporary wife for an hour, prostitute, at his discretion. The Sharia Muslim law controls the private as well as the public life of the woman. In the West world, America, Muslim men are starting to demand Sharia law so the wife cannot obtain a divorce and he can have full and complete control of her. It is amazing and alarming how many of our sisters and daughters attending American universities are now marrying Muslim men and submitting themselves and their children unsuspectingly to the Sharia law. By passing this on, enlightened American women may avoid becoming a slave under Sharia law. Ripping the West in two. Author and lecturer Noni Darwish says the goal of radical Islamists is to impose Sharia law on the world, ripping Western law and liberty in two. She recently authored the book, Cruel and Usual Punishment, The Terrifying Global Implications of Islamic Law. Darwish was born in Cairo and spent her childhood in Egypt and Gaza before immigrating to America in 1978, when she was 8 years old. Her father died while leading covert attacks on Israel. He was a high-ranking Egyptian military officer stationed with his family in Gaza. When he died, he was considered a shahid, a martyr for jihad. His posthumous status earned Noni and her family an elevated position in Muslim society. But Darwish developed a skeptic eye at an early age. She questioned her own Muslim culture and upbringing. She converted to Christianity after hearing a Christian preacher on television. In her latest book, Darwish warns about creeping Sharia law, what it is, what it means, and how it is manifested in Islamic countries. For the West, she says radical Islamists are working to impose Sharia on the world. If that happens, Western civilization will be destroyed. Westerners generally assume all religions encourage a respect for the dignity of each individual. Islamic law, Sharia, teaches that non-Muslims should be subjugated or killed in this world. Peace and prosperity for one's children is not as important as assuring that Islamic law rules everywhere in the Middle East and eventually in the world. While Westerners tend to think that all religions encourage some form of the Golden Rule, Sharia teaches two systems of ethics, one for Muslims and another for non-Muslims. Building on tribal practices of the 7th century, Sharia encourages the side of humanity that wants to take from and subjugate others. While Westerners tend to think in terms of religious people developing a personal understanding of and relationship with God, Sharia advocates executing people who ask difficult questions that could be interpreted as criticism. It's hard to imagine that in this day and age, Islamic scholars agree that those who criticize Islam or choose to stop being Muslim should be executed. Sadly, while talk of an Islamic reformation is common and even assumed by many in the West, such murmurings in the Middle East are silenced through intimidation. While Westerners are accustomed to an increase in religious tolerance over time, Darwish explains how petrodollars are being used to grow an extremely intolerant form of political Islam in her native Egypt and elsewhere. In 20 years there will be enough Muslim voters in the U.S. to elect the president by themselves. Rest assured they will do so. You can look at how they have taken over several towns in the USA. Dearborn, Michigan is one. And there are others. I think everyone in the United States should be required to read this. But with the clue, there is no way this will be widely publicized, unless each of us sends it on. It is too bad that so many are disillusioned with life and Christianity to accept Muslims as peaceful. Some may be, but they have an army that is willing to shed blood in the name of Islam. The peaceful support the warriors with their finances and do one kind of patriotism to their religion. While America is getting rid of Christianity from all public sites and erasing God from the lives of children, the Muslims are planning a great jihad on Europe and America. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 24. Islam's support of pedophilia. An unknown facet of Islam that most Westerners are ignorant of is the extent of pedophilia that exists and is an important part of controlling and dominating women in Islam. Sharia law. Sharia law is spreading around the world to the detriment of those that do not want it. Here is information on the practical application of Sharia law. The following is a list of provisions of Sharia law collected by Noni Darwish and posted on several discussion boards on the Internet. Imam Faisal Abu Rauf, founder and CEO of the American Society for Muslim Advancement and political architect of the Cordoba House, Ground Zero Mosque, claims that the U.S. Constitution is Sharia compliant. Now let us examine below a few laws of Sharia to see if Imam Rauf is truthful or a fraud. 1. Jihad, defined as, to war against non-Muslims to establish the religion, is the duty of every Muslim and Muslim head of state, caliph. Muslim caliphs who refuse jihad are in violation of Sharia and unfit to rule. 2. A caliph can hold office through seizure of power, meaning through force. 3. A caliph is exempt from being charged with serious crimes such as murder, adultery, robbery, theft, drinking and in some cases of rape. 4. A percentage of zakat, alms, must go towards jihad. 5. It is obligatory to obey the commands of the caliph, even if he is unjust. 6. A caliph must be a Muslim, a non-slave and a male. 7. The Muslim public must remove the caliph in one case, if he rejects Islam. 8. A Muslim who leaves Islam must be killed immediately. 9. A Muslim will be forgiven for murder of 1. An apostasy, 2. An adulterer, 3. A highway robber. Making vigilante street justice and honor killing acceptable. 10. A Muslim will not get the death penalty if he kills a non-Muslim. 11. Sharia never abolished slavery and sexual slavery and highly regulates it. A master will not be punished for killing his slave. 12. Sharia dictates death by stoning, beheading, amputation of limbs, flogging and other forms of cruel and unusual punishments, even for crimes of sin such as adultery. 13. Non-Muslims are not equal to Muslims and must comply to Sharia if they are to remain safe. They are forbidden to marry Muslim women, publicly display wine or pork, recite their scriptures or openly celebrate their religious holidays or funerals. They are forbidden from building new churches or building them higher than mosques. They may not enter a mosque without permission. A non-Muslim is no longer protected if he commits adultery with a Muslim woman or if he leads a Muslim away from Islam. 14. It is a crime for a non-Muslim to sell weapons to someone who will use them against Muslims. Non-Muslims cannot curse a Muslim, say anything derogatory about Allah, the Prophet, or Islam, or expose the weak points of Muslims. However, the opposite is not true for Muslims. 15. A non-Muslim cannot inherit from a Muslim. 16. Banks must be Sharia compliant and interest is not allowed. 17. No testimony in court is acceptable from people of low-level jobs, such as street sweepers or a bathhouse attendant. Women in such low-level jobs such as professional funeral mourners cannot keep custody of their children in case of divorce. 18. A non-Muslim cannot rule even over a non-Muslim's minority. 19. Homosexuality is punishable by death. 20. There is no age limit for marriage of girls under Sharia. The marriage contract can take place anytime after birth and consummated at age 8 or 9. 21. Rebelliousness on the part of the wife nullifies the husband's obligation to support her, gives him permission to beat her and keep her from leaving the home. 22. Divorce is only in the hands of the husband and is as easy as saying, "I divorce you," and becomes effective even if the husband did not intend it. 23. There is no community property between husband and wife, and the husband's property does not automatically go to the wife after his death. 24. A woman inherits half what a man inherits. 25. A man has the right to have up to 4 wives and she has no right to divorce him even if he is polygamous. 26. The dowry is given in exchange for the woman's sexual organs. 27. A man is allowed to have sex with slave women and women captured in battle, and if the enslaved woman is married, her marriage is annulled. 28. The testimony of a woman in court is half the value of a man. 29. A woman loses custody if she remarries. 30. To prove rape, a woman must have 4 male witnesses. 31. A rapist may only be required to pay the bride money, dowry, without marrying the rape victim. 32. A Muslim woman must cover every inch of her body which is considered a sexual organ. Some schools of Sharia allow the face and some don't. 33. A Muslim man is forgiven if he kills his wife caught in the act of adultery. However, the opposite is not true for women, since he could be married to the woman he was caught with. These are clear-cut laws in Islam decided by great imams after years of examination and interpretation of the Quran, Hadith and Muhammad's life. The Sharia is the divine law sent by Allah. It is justice for mankind. It is a noble thing to invite someone to a superior way of life. Imam Anjum Chowdhury. Saying there is an invitation to become a Muslim implies there is a choice. As history has recorded, the choice is to convert to Islam or die. To Muslims, this is an invitation. To non-Muslims, it is a death threat. This is just another example of the dishonest nature of Islam in its treatment of non-Muslims. They say that Islam is a superior way of life, and then they have to force people to accept Islam, often under penalty of death. Forced servitude to imams and other totalitarian Islamic governments who interpret the teachings of Islam as they see fit is not a superior way of life. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 25. The truth about Islam. Welcome to the future. How long will it take until Buckingham Palace, Westminster Abbey, and Windsor Castle are converted into mosques? Anyone that believes and advances the theory that Islam is a peaceful and tolerant religion is at odds with the Quran, Hadith, Tafsir, and 1,400 years of Islamic history. The worldwide domination of Islam over all people is their intention. Keep in mind how Islam treats other religions and personal freedom around the world. While history records Adolf Hitler and his vision of the master race of Aryans, Islam has a similar vision of the master religion, dominating the world, maintaining supremacy over all religions, and controlling all people in every nation. Muslims are not moving into European countries for the purpose of assimilating into European culture. They are moving into European countries to assert and establish Islam as the dominant religion. You do not need to take our word for it, just look at the thousands of videos on the internet. Listen to what true Muslims have to say. It is the Islamists that seek to gain power and rule over others in order to force their beliefs on entire populations, as they have done all over the world during the last 1,400 years of existence. What Muslim does not think that Islam is the only true religion and that other religions are inferior to the teachings of Islam? To the surprise of those that accept the fallacy that Islam is a peaceful religion full of love and respect for all people and religions, Islam is at war with every other religion in the world, and there is a reason for it. The belief in Islam is a belief in total domination of Islam over all other belief doctrines. When a follower of Islam has killed a certain number of infidels, he is assured of place in paradise, no matter what his sins may be. That means that a Muslim can be absolved of all past sins by killing enough infidels. When war breaks out in many European countries, Muslims will have no problem killing with impunity. This is exactly what happened in Lebanon. If you remember history, Lebanon was a predominantly Christian country that was the beacon of peace and intellectual culture in the Middle East until the uncontrolled immigration of Muslims reached a critical mass and eventually civil war erupted in the mid-1970s. This is an important concept to remember when the Muslim population is sufficient and they decide that control Europe and an Islamic-based government should be implemented and free elections and democracy should be replaced. What Muslim does not believe that the Prophet Muhammad spoke the word of truth directly from Allah? They believe this with all their being, and they have no problem dying to force non-Muslims, also known as infidels, to accept the word of Muhammad and their truth of Islam, without question or accept the consequences of a disbeliever. Islamic law does not favor infidels. Sharia law does not lend itself to those that do not accept Islam as the only true religion. Islam, a religion based on terrorism. Part 26. Islam is like rabies, it turns an ordinary peaceful human being into a dangerous madman. Abu Qasim. The facts presented on this website are ironclad and indisputable. The statements from Muslim leaders show their true intentions. The danger is real. When they say they are going to kill you, believe them. It is not Islamophobia when they really are trying to kill you. Presenting the truth is not hate or racism. These people are truly dangerous and they should not be trusted. They are evil in every sense of the word. They will lie, cheat, and kill as a means to an end. Lying to infidels is an accepted practice. Whenever possible, Muslims are permitted to feign friendship and loyalty to non-Muslims, or, in the words of Abu Darda, a pious companion of Muhammad, we smile in the face of some people although our hearts curse them. They do not care how many Americans, Israelis, or non-Muslims have to die, because in their world, Muslims are superior to all infidels, that is non-Muslims, and infidels are not worthy of living. The only difference between the Nazis in World War II and the teachings of Islam is that Muslims believe that they are acting on the will of Allah, and therefore any act of terrorism or murder is not a sin, but rather a holy act that must be completed in order to properly show respect and submission to Islam, Muhammad, and Allah.